The Lord answers Job. There was a man named Job, a man who lived long ago, in a time when people worshiped God with deep devotion and trust. Job was known far and wide for his kindness. He had a good heart, and he tried always to live in a way that made others happy and honored God. He had a family he loved dearly, children who brought laughter and light to his days. Now Job's life was not always easy. There came a time when he faced great sorrow. Very suddenly, many troubles came upon him. He lost his children, his wealth was taken away, his health grew weak. Friends who once comforted him now questioned his goodness. In the quiet moments of his pain, he wondered why all these things had happened to him. Job spoke honestly about his sadness and confusion. He did not hide his feelings or pretend to understand what was happening. Sometimes he prayed in silence. At other times he turned his face toward the sky and asked God, "Where are you? Why have you allowed this?" For many days and nights, Job sat quietly in the dust. He dressed in simple cloth, and his body was heavy with grief. His heart felt heavy too. Friends came to visit, hoping to ease his sorrow. They spoke with many words, trying to find reasons for Job's suffering. But Job only knew that his pain was real and deep. Then, after Job had spoken about his sorrow and confusion, the sky seemed to grow still. A whisper carried through the wind, and then a voice answered. The voice was not loud or harsh. It was gentle but full of power, like thunder in the distance, or the quiet murmur of a river over smooth stones. The Lord began to speak to Job out of a whirlwind. "Who is this that darkens my plans with words without knowledge?" the voice asked softly. The Lord asked Job to listen carefully, to think about the world around him, the vast skies, the deep seas, the creatures that live on the land and in the air. "Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation?" the Lord asked. The question moved slowly, like clouds drifting in the evening sky. It seemed to invite Job to remember how great and beautiful the world is, and how much there is that is beyond human understanding. The Lord spoke of the oceans, vast and deep, filled with mysteries, the stars, countless and shining in the night, each with a purpose known only to him, the wind, rushing across the lands, shaping the mountains and valleys. With calm and gentle words, the Lord reminded Job that the world is full of wonders that no one can fully grasp. The animals big and small, the birds that fly with the wind, and even the flowers that bloom quietly in the meadows, all were made with care. "Can you, Job, command the morning? Can you send the dawn to wake the earth?" the voice asked softly. Job listened. He thought about the morning light that came so surely each day, the sunlight that warmed the fields, and the cool shadows that receded. The question was not meant to point out Job's weakness, but to invite him to think deeply about the mysteries of creation. The Lord spoke about the rain, how it falls gently to make the crops grow, about the animals that find their places, the wild ox, the eagle that soars high. Each has a place and a time, just as Job had once known in his life, before his troubles. The voice was both calm and powerful, like the steady beat of a drum or the soft rustle of leaves in a forest. It did not scold, but it did remind. It invited Job into a quiet wonder, a peaceful reflection on the vastness of all that God made. Then the voice spoke of the great sea creature, called Leviathan, a creature so strong and wild that it could not be tamed by any human. It was a symbol of the powerful and sometimes frightening things of the world. Yet even Leviathan was part of the Lord's creation. The Lord asked Job if he could catch the Leviathan or hold it with a rope. Could Job make it a servant or put a bridle on it? The gentle questions invited Job to think about the limits of human power in the presence of God's mighty creation. As the Lord's voice continued, Job felt a quiet peace beginning to grow within him. It was not a sudden end to his sorrow, but a gentle reminder that there is a vastness beyond human pain, a vastness that holds mysteries and wonders that no one can fully understand. The Lord's voice did not answer all of Job's questions about suffering. It did not explain why bad things happen, but it invited Job to rest in the knowledge that the world is made with care and is held in God's hands. Slowly, the thunder in the distance softened to a stillness. The whirlwind quieted. The voice ceased. Job was left in the calm, with a heart that began to understand something new, that even in pain, there is a place to trust in the quiet power and love behind all things. And so, Job sat in the dust, listening to the silence after the voice had spoken. The night air was cool. The stars glimmered softly above. A A gentle peace began to settle over his soul. In this stillness, Job was not alone. The vastness of sky and sea, the creatures of earth, and the morning light all whispered that life was held by a hand greater than his own. As he closed his eyes, feeling the cool earth beneath him and the soft breeze around him, he knew that the story was not yet done. The Lord had spoken, and something deep inside had shifted. But the journey, the questions, and the quiet waiting, these were far from over. The whirlwind's voice receded into the vast sky, leaving Job alone with the fading echoes of that divine conversation. The words hung in the air, not as a dismissal, but an invitation, a whisper coaxing him ever deeper into reflection. The earth beneath him was silent, save for the soft rustling of the wind through the scattered leaves, the steady beat of his own heart a gentle reminder that he was still here, still breathing. His eyes opened slowly, met first with the pale, settling light of dawn. Colors spilled softly across the horizon, faint blues melting into golds and pinks, as though the heavens themselves were tenderly unfolding a new day. In this quiet moment, Job felt the breadth of the empty sky arching above him, like a vast canvas painted by the hand of eternity. He thought again of the morning light the Lord had spoken about, the way it breaks through darkness without struggle or complaint, a silent promise that the world will continue to turn, no matter the weight of human sorrow. Job's own pain seemed smaller now, set beside the unshakable rhythms of dawn and dusk, the turning seasons, the ceaseless oceans. Even as grief clung to him like a shadow, a fragile thread of something new began to weave through his being, something that felt like peace, or at least its gentle beginning. The memory of the Leviathan stirred again, that magnificent beast of chaos and might, bound yet unbroken, unknowable yet known. It was not a symbol of fear alone, but of awe, an acknowledgement that even the wildest power belongs to a greater order, a greater purpose. Job's gaze drifted downward, to the small blades of grass trembling in the morning breeze. Each one, so fragile, carried the green fire of life, reaching and growing. They obey the sun and the rain, silent in their simplicity, yet perfect in their existence. His thoughts wandered to the animals the Lord had called upon, the wild deer leaping gracefully through the woods, the lion stretching lazily in the sun's warmth, the birds rising in spirals of song, all creatures too small or too great, too fierce or too gentle, known intimately by the Creator. In that knowing, Job sensed something akin to a promise, an assurance that life in all its forms was held with care, even if that care was often invisible, and its reasons hidden beyond human sight. He recalled, too, the moments when he had doubted, when his anger had flared against the void. Where had he been, he had asked, amidst the storms of his suffering? And now he glimpsed an answer, not in the absence of pain, but in the presence of this greater mystery, so vast and deep that it carried even his anguish within it. Job did not find neat explanations or sudden relief. Instead, he found a quiet acceptance, the beginning of surrender, not to despair, but to a trust that life's fabric was woven by hands far more skilled than his own. He could still feel the rawness inside him, the ache that had not yet healed, but it was tempered now by a growing stillness, a steadiness that did not require him to understand everything. As the sun rose higher, the earth came fully alive in the gentle warmth of morning. Rays sifted through the branches, dappling the ground with light and shadow, a mosaic alike to the complexities of life itself, things bright and dark, pain mingled with hope. Job's breathing deepened. He closed his eyes again, breathing in the cool air, the scent of damp earth and wildflowers. He felt connected to the land, to the sky, to the vastness beyond, the same creation that had cradled his ancestors and would one day welcome him. In this grounding, there was comfort, not the kind that demands grand declarations or immediate healing, but the kind that whispers softly, "You are not alone. You belong. You are held." The Lord's voice had not answered all the queries that thrummed within Job's heart. The reasons for suffering remained cloaked in mystery, unfolding perhaps with time. Yet Job had tasted a new truth, that beneath the deepest pain, beneath the questions and fears, was the quiet presence of a power that continued to hold all things in balance. He sat with this realization as the day began its steady course. Around him the world moved tirelessly forward, the buzz of insects, the distant call of a bird, the gentle sway of trees. Each sound a small miracle, each moment a pulse of life. In time, Job rose. His limbs felt heavy, but steady. He looked out over the land that stretched into the horizon, fields touched with morning dew, rivers shimmering silver in the sunlight. There was much left unsaid, many mysteries yet to be understood. But Job was no longer the same man who had sat in despair moments before. He carried within him the memory of the whirlwind's voice, and with it the beginning of hope. The journey would continue, winding through shadows and light, doubt and faith walking side by side. Yet now, within him, stirred a patience, a quiet courage to face the unknown, trusting in the unseen hand that shaped all things. The earth beneath his feet was steady, the sky above vast and endless, and the Lord in all his vastness was near. A soft breeze brushed against Job's cheek, like a gentle benediction. He closed his eyes, allowing himself to rest for a moment, knowing that though pain remained, so too did the wonder of being alive within this great creation. With a final deep breath, Job began to walk, each step lighter than the last, embraced by the silence and the promise of the day. The story was not finished, but the beginning of peace had found its place within him, like the first light of dawn, slow and steady, bringing the world back to life. The sky shifted softly, the light mellowing as the day deepened. Job paused at the edge of a quiet meadow, watching the gentle sway of grass and the slow dance of shadows beneath tall trees. In this stillness, the noise of his heart's turmoil seemed to narrow into a single steady beat that echoed the calm rhythm of the earth. In moments like these, the presence of the Creator felt less like thunderous commands or fiery revelations, and more like the subtle breath between the leaves, a quiet pulse holding everything in place. Job noticed how life continues, not in spite of struggle, but alongside it. Shoots pushing through hard soil, delicate petals unfolding, even with chill in the air, resilient roots clutching deep, unseen ground. He thought of the animals passing by, unfazed by their dangers, their needs met instinctively. Perhaps they knew something he was only beginning to understand, that the world does not demand of life perfect understanding or painless days. It simply asks for persistence, the small act of continuing, moment to moment. Job's gaze rested on a lone bird perched on a branch, its plumage catching broken beams of sunlight. The bird's song was soft, tentative at first, a whisper rather than a cry. In that song, Job heard an invitation, not to conquer mystery, but to live alongside it, to find grace in the not knowing and healing in acceptance. A gentle breeze stirred, carrying with it the faint scent of earth and dew. Job closed his eyes briefly, letting the cool air soothe the unrest within. A slow surrender took root deep under his ribs, not a giving up, but a leaning into the vastness beyond his pain. The ache beneath remained, a hollow that no words could fill, but it no longer gnawed with the same fierce hunger for answers. Instead, it settled into the background like a low hum, a presence acknowledged but no longer feared. And in its place, a fragile hope began to flicker, a quiet pledge made in the early light, to walk forward, step by step, with patience as his companion. The world around him breathed on, indifferent yet intimate, chaotic yet orderly. Job sensed he was part of its grander weave, threads of suffering and joy, shadow and illumination entwined beyond his sight. This tapestry stretched far beyond his own story, cradled by the hands that fashioned stars and seas. He thought again of the whirlwind, where the voice of the Lord had spoken, not with clear explanation, but with the sheer vastness of creation echoing the divine. That voice was neither harsh nor easy to hear. It was the sound of mystery itself, calling him to trust without certainty. Job felt a soft strength growing within, a patient courage that did not demand victory over hardship, but the endurance to embrace it. This courage was a quiet fire. It did not consume but warmed the space around it, kindling a peace that now softened his features. The sun climbed higher, scattering light across the lengthening grass. Job's shadow stretched long, joining the shadows of trees and stones, invisible threads linking him with the earth. He reached out his hand, imagining the unseen force that shaped all this wonder, touching his palm, a gentle benediction resting in stillness. With each breath, the sense of belonging deepened, not a belonging based solely on joy or comfort, but one forged in the shared experience of fragility and strength. To be alive was to be intertwined with every creature, every moment, every whisper of wind and flicker of light. As Job turned to make his way along a narrow path winding through the meadow, his steps were lighter than before. The journey ahead was uncertain, the terrain unknown, yet the weight that had pressed so heavily on his shoulders was diminished, not gone, but transformed into a companion light enough to carry. He paused once more, looking back over the fields bathed in gold and green. The earth held its secrets close, but it also stretched an unspoken invitation to trust in the silent goodness that undergirds the world, to believe that beneath the hardship, a sustaining power endures. Job's heart swelled with a gratitude mingled with reverence, a quiet thanksgiving for the living breath of creation and the unseen hand guiding it. Though his story was not yet fully told, he felt a new beginning stirring within, the dawn of hope born not from answers, but from the courage to abide in mystery. With a final glance toward the horizon, he stepped forward, each movement a prayer of surrender and strength woven together, a testimony to the enduring dance of faith amid pain. The path stretched onward, framed by light and shadow, and Job walked it with a calm born of trust. The Lord's voice had not unraveled the deepest questions, but it had planted a seed of peace, a quiet assurance that despite the unknown, love holds all things together. And so, beneath the vast sky and amid the soft murmur of creation, Job embraced the journey still ahead, his spirit steady, his heart open, and his steps guided by the gentle light of morning. The sky, wide and unfurling, seemed to deepen its colors as Job moved slowly through the quiet earth. There was an immense stillness about the hills and the distant trees, as if the world itself had settled into a patient, unhurried breath. This quiet did not press or demand, it simply was, and Job felt pulled toward it, like a moth drawn not just to light, but to the soft warmth around the flame. His steps came with calm deliberation, no longer quickened by fear or despair. Each footfall on the gentle soil was a silent meditation, a prayer without words. The path ahead was not made clear by signposts or promises. Instead, it was woven from the subtle threads of faith, like the delicate veins in a leaf, strong enough to carry life, but fragile to touch. Job recalled the birdsong once more, not just as sound, but as an emblem of deeper harmony. How tenderly it had invited him to trust in uncertainty, to live wherever clarity did not reach. The song sang still in his heart, an echo soft as a shadow, inviting him forward, step by step, into a life that accepted the unseen and the unknowable. Around him the small sounds of the earth stirred, leaves trembling in a breeze, the distant rustle of wings, a creek's gentle murmur. These whispered their own language of endurance and grace, a language Job now understood not with the mind alone, but with his whole being. There was no need for answers to overpower the mysteries, only for the patient presence that awaited each new moment as it arrived. Pain, once a sharp blade, had settled into a kind of companion that did not wound, but reminded. It reminded Job of the depth of his own heart, capable of carrying both agony and awe. He no longer sought to outrun suffering or silence the questions. Instead, he held them gently between his hands, as one might hold a fragile shell found on the shore. The shell is cracked and weathered, but still beautiful, still a vessel for secret tides. In this unfolding acceptance, Job's spirit discovered a quiet strength like the roots of ancient trees, hidden beneath the surface, unseen but unshakable. These roots taught endurance, the slow gathering of nourishment from dark, rich earth, and patience that outlasts storms. Job felt these roots stretching wide, grounding him in a subtle steadiness that could bear any season. The whirlwind's voice, once terrifying in its power and mystery, now spoke differently. It was less thunder and more a profound silence filled with meaning, a silence that held space for questions without rushing to close them, a silence that invited trust even when the path appeared shadowed. This voice was the echo of the creative pulse that undergirds the world, a pulse Job heard now in the beating of his own heart. He lifted his gaze to the horizon, where sky met land in a soft line blurred by distance. There was no end found there, no conclusion, only the beautiful promise of continuation. The future was a vast canvas, waiting for delicate brushstrokes, not a fixed picture to be completed. Job felt the ease of release. No longer bound by the desperate need for certainty, he could move forward alongside the unknown. Gratitude, like a warm current, filled him. It was not bound to joy alone, but included grief, wonder, and every shade in between. Job felt gratitude for this life that held such paradoxes, fragility and strength, light and shadow, sorrow and hope. In this fullness he found a sacred trust, a reverence for the intricate weave of existence that cradles even the darkest moments. He walked with a softened heart, aware that every step was both loss and gain. Each moment carried the weight of all that had come before, and the promise quietly growing in the seeds of tomorrow. As he moved, the earth beneath him seemed to pulse with kind assurance, a steady rhythm guiding him onward without demand or haste. The unseen forces weaving the world together were now companions on his journey, neither distant nor aloof, but intimately present in the breath of wind and the patterns in the stars. Job sensed this presence as a quiet power sustaining all life, a power that worked not by coercion but through patient love and subtle communion. In the gentle unfolding of the day's end, as light softened and the world prepared for rest, Job's spirit embraced a peaceful surrender. The previous tumult of heartache and questioning had not vanished, but transformed into a gentle current flowing beneath his being, steady and sure. Amidst the vast unknown, he chose to trust in the silent goodness that held the universe. With this trust, Job stepped forward with a calm courage. His journey was no longer about defeating pain or demanding clarity, but about living faithfully within the great mystery. Each breath, each movement was a small act of hope, an offering to the enduring love that shaped all things in hidden ways. As dusk deepened, the stars began their quiet dance in the sky, distant lights shimmering like promises that cannot be fully grasped, but only admired. Job looked up, feeling a tender kinship with the countless souls who had walked uncertain paths before him. This vast company of seekers, of sufferers and dreamers, framed his own story as part of an eternal tapestry woven through time. He carried no burden, but the transformed pain turned lighter by acceptance, no maps but the deep knowing that to journey is to live in trust. In this space, fragile yet strong, Job found his place, a humble yet profound belonging within the wide, unfolding mystery of being. The night enfolded the earth, gentle and vast. Job's heart swelled with a silent song, the song of surrender and hope intertwined. And in that quiet song, the world felt endlessly good, endlessly held by an unseen love that never faltered, waiting patiently for each soul to find its way home. In these still moments, a new clarity began to emerge within Job, not as a burst of understanding, but as a quiet unfolding, like dawn spilling light across soft hills. He no longer wrestled with the enigma of suffering as a puzzle to be solved or a verdict to be overturned. Instead, he met it as a companion, a shadow cast by the same sun that warmed his face. The world had not shrunken under his gaze, it had expanded. Each blade of grass, each whispering breeze, every undisclosed mystery now held a sacred place in his heart. The vastness of life's questions no longer isolated him, but connected him to a lineage of seekers, their voices blending with his silent prayers. Job noticed the subtle pulse beneath all creation, a rhythm neither loud nor insistent, but steady and sure. It was as if the earth itself breathed alongside him, its cadence a reminder that time's river flows generously, carrying both joy and sorrow without discrimination. In this current, he found himself neither adrift nor anchored, but moving, alive in the flow. Often, as night wrapped gently around the land, Job felt the tender embrace of stars overhead. Their ancient fires spoke of endurance beyond human span. He imagined their distant light carrying the hope of countless souls before him, those who had journeyed through darkness toward a dawn they could not yet name. Within his own chest, an echo of that celestial steadying emerged. It was a soft murmur, less a voice than a feeling, that invited him simply to be present, vulnerable and whole, amid the flickers of despair and the glimmers of grace. In these moments, Job found the language of surrender not as giving up, but as yielding to the profound mystery of existence, allowing himself to rest in what could not be controlled or fully known. This surrender was not a void, but a fertile soil, nourishing new growth even amid sadness. He remembered the many questions he had raised into the whirlwind, unanswered and perhaps unanswerable. Now those queries rested gently within him, framed by a new patience. Questions no longer felt like wounds, but like seeds planted in quiet soil, waiting for the unfurling of time's unseen script. Job's path illuminated not by certainty but by trust, trust in the invisible threads that link life together, in the sacred pulse beneath the tumult, and in the unspoken love that had unfolded quietly around him all along. This trust softened the edges of his pain, not erasing it, but weaving it into the tapestry of his being. As dawn approached once again, he lifted his gaze toward the unfolding sky. The morning light spilled over the horizon. a radiant invitation to continue moving forward without rush or fear. In his heart, hope mingled with humility, not the proud hope of mastery, but the gentle hope of presence. With each breath, Job embraced the paradox that life held, the entwined dance of joy and sorrow, loss and renewal, pain and peace. In this embrace, he perceived the pulse of a love that neither failed nor demanded proof, a love that simply was, enduring beneath the surface of change. And so, in the quiet aftermath of the storm, Job found himself folded into the great rhythm of life, not as an isolated figure battling fate, but as a thread woven into an endless unfolding tapestry, cared for by a presence both mysterious and tender. In this unfolding trust, Job's spirit grew light, and his step became steady once more, ready to walk forward into the unknown horizon, with the calm courage born from deep within enduring love. In the stillness that follows the dawn, Job felt the world settle around him like a quiet breath. The cold edges of his worries had softened, no longer sharp shards piercing his heart. Instead, they had melted into the steady flow of existence, becoming part of the pulse he sensed within everything. There was a presence now, not loud or demanding, but so gentle, it stretched across his being like a silken thread. It was a presence woven from the vastness of stars, the whisper of winds, and the soft rustle of leaves. It spoke without words, not in answers, but in the language of trust and enduring love. Job's thoughts drifted to the image of the vast sky, endless and deep. The stars, though distant, were not cold or empty. They were beacons, small fires burning steady against the night's darkness. They held the memory of light, hope that had persisted through ages. To Job, their quiet glow was a message that light remains, even when unseen. Within him a new rhythm was growing, not of despair, but of gentle acceptance and movement forward. He realized suffering was no longer a burden to bear, but a companion walking beside him. It was a teacher in a silent school, shaping his understanding in ways he could not yet fully grasp. This companion did not demand answers, it invited patience. The great paradox of existence revealed itself more clearly now. Joy and sorrow were not enemies but dance partners, entwined in an endless embrace. Each gave weight to the other, carving depth and meaning into the life that flowed through creation. Job's heart, once weighed down by confusion, began to buoy lightly on this understanding. He remembered the lineage of seekers before him, those who had stood on the edge of mystery, eyes lifted toward the heavens, hands open in surrender. They had not always found neat conclusions or direct responses, yet they had known a quiet peace born from embracing life's questions without haste. This peace was not resignation, but a fertile soil from which courage and love could grow. It allowed Job to release the need for control, to lean into the unknown with a spirit steady and calm. In this place, surrender was not defeat, it was a doorway. The invisible threads binding all life felt tangible to Job, like soft cords connecting him to unseen forces of grace. Each painful moment, every silent tear, each spark of hope was woven into this tapestry, creating a story larger and more beautiful than any single part. As the sun climbed higher, its light spilled anew over the world, touching the contours of earth and sky alike. Job welcomed this warmth, feeling it seep into his bones, rekindling a fire steady and quiet. It was a fire not of wild flames but of enduring light, steady nourishment for the soul. The questions that once stirred turmoil now rested gently within his heart. They were no longer storms to weather but waves folding softly onto the shore. Their edges softened by patience. They became part of the sacred rhythm of life. In this profound stillness, Job sensed the subtle movements of the world, a leaf drifting down, the faint hum of distant rivers, the soft trill of morning birds. Each was a note in the profound symphony of existence, a reminder of life's continual unfolding. He understood now that love did not seek to grasp or demand. It simply was, a steady, unconditional presence that sustained the universe. This love endured beyond suffering, beyond questions, a quiet force holding all things with tenderness. Job felt himself knitted into this vast web, a single thread in a boundless fabric. Though fragile alone, together the threads formed strength, beauty, and continuity. In this weave he found belonging, no longer isolated, but part of an enduring whole. He knew that the journey ahead would hold its own challenges, but there was no fear. The fierce light of courage burned softly within, ready to guide each step. There was patience in his embrace and a calm readiness to move forward. The sun's steady arc traced a path across the sky, a reminder that each cycle held promise, the promise of new beginnings, new understanding. In this rhythm, Job found a quiet assurance that whatever came, he would be carried by the steady pulse of life. His spirit, once burdened, was now lifted, light, steady, and clear. The silent song of hope hummed softly inside him, a melody woven from trust and surrender. Within the vast mystery, Job's heart had found its home, and with this he rose, not triumphant in the way the world hears victory, but quiet, steady, and full of a courage born from deep within. He stepped forward into the unfolding day, wrapped in the gentle certainty that he was never truly alone. For the great rhythm of life carried him still, as it carries all, through joy and sorrow, question and light, into the endless dawn. In the deep quiet of dawn, Job stood still, sensing a shift that had nothing to do with circumstance, but everything to do with the heart's awakening. The silent spaces between thoughts no longer filled him with confusion or impatience, but with a soft reverence, as if the very act of waiting held its own sacred meaning. In this delicate pause he found a new rhythm, one that did not demand but simply listened. The voices inside him, once a tumult of protest and pain, had settled into a gentle murmuring, a calm current beneath the surface. It was not resignation, nor was it a forced cheerfulness, but a tender acknowledgement of all that had been and all that could be. He understood now that to live is to carry such currents, sometimes swift, sometimes slow, yet always alive. Everything seemed knitted together in that moment. The memories of anguish, the faint stirrings of hope, the unspoken questions that might never find answers, and the quiet trust that dawn brings, no matter the night endured. This tapestry was not perfect, nor was it meant to be. Its beauty lay precisely in its imperfection, woven not by hands seeking control, but by life itself, threading through joy and sorrow alike. As the sun climbed higher, its light softened the edges of the sky, and with it came the awareness that his transformation was not an endpoint. Rather, it was a doorway, an opening to a life lived more fully, with all its complexities embraced. He felt the invisible threads connecting him to those who had walked this path before him, to those who walked alongside him now, and to those yet to come. This connection was no abstract idea, but a tangible presence, as real as the breath rising and falling in his chest. There was a warmth in knowing that his story, with all its pain and healing, contributed to the vast unfinished tapestry of human experience. It was a reminder that none of us truly walk alone, even in the darkest valleys. Job's heart, once heavy and burdened, now held a quiet lightness, not from forgetting or overcoming pain, but from understanding it as a form of wisdom, silent, patient, and profound. This wisdom did not erase suffering, it carried it, transforming it with the gentle courage of those who keep walking despite uncertainty. He recalled the images of the long line of seekers who came before him, those souls who met the world with open hands and hearts, offering questions rather than demanding answers. They had shown him that the space between what we know and what we yearn to understand can itself be a sacred place. In that space, Job found room to breathe freely, to witness his life without resistance, and to accept the mystery that life is. In the giving up of control, he had discovered control's quiet twin, surrender, not as defeat, but as invitation. This surrender opened him to the subtle lessons hidden within every breath, every encounter, every moment. The sacred rhythm of life pulsed beneath his skin like a timeless song, old as the stars and as fresh as each morning's breeze. There was a harmony in its unfolding, a melody composed of small, gentle awakenings rather than grand declarations. Love, he saw now, was not a fragile thread easily broken by sorrow, but a steadfast current running beneath all things. It was the enduring pulse that held the cosmos together, a refuge beyond all doubt. This unconditional presence did not promise an absence of hardship, but it offered something perhaps more vital, the assurance of belonging. Job felt this belonging deep in his bones, a quiet communion with the earth beneath his feet, the sky above his head, and every life journeying alongside him. He understood that in embracing the collective fabric, he tapped into a source of strength and beauty that no solitude could diminish. With this understanding came a renewed calm, a steady courage to face whatever the future held. There was no rush, no desperate grasping, only a patient trust in the unfolding of time. He knew that growth, like the seasons, moves in its own divine tempo, carried gently forward by the pulse of life itself. As he rose to meet the day, the quiet hope within him steadied and lifted his spirit. It was a hope not born of certainty, but of surrender and trust. A hope that reminded him he was never truly alone, that all of existence was a shared journey. The morning air wrapped around him like a soft cloak, refreshing and full of promise. Each step he took was light but purposeful, a testament to the resilience of the human soul. The horizon before him held no fixed answers, but an invitation to walk bravely into the unfolding story of life. And so Job moved forward, not with the clamor of demands or the weight of despair, but with the gentle strength of one who has learned to carry both suffering and joy as companions. His heart beat in time with the sacred rhythm, steady and sure, a quiet flame glowing softly within. In this place of calm surrender and careful trust, the journey continued, ever unfolding, ever mysterious, ever beautiful. As dawn softened the edges of the night, Job rose with a quiet resolve that felt lighter than it had just days before. The heaviness that once settled like a shroud across his chest had eased into something he could breathe around, a gentle breathing space where pain and hope coexisted in delicate balance. He stepped outside, the coolness of morning air touching his skin like a whispered invitation. The world held its usual rhythms, yet to Job, each moment now carried the weight and grace of profound meaning. Leaves rustled in a soft chorus as if nature herself was speaking in tongues only the heart could understand. Job felt the pulse of the earth beneath his feet, steady and unyielding. It reminded him that growth often happens unseen, roots deepening quietly before any shoot rises toward the sun. This truth alone softened his impatience. Transformation is a slow unfolding, one that cannot be rushed or coerced. Sitting upon a stone warmed gently by the emerging light, Job closed his eyes. He reached inward, tracing the invisible threads that wove through his being, ties to those who had walked before him and those yet to come. In this vast tapestry, no thread stood alone. Every sorrow, every moment of surrender was a stitch that held the whole together, a sign of resilience clothed in humility. The Lord's presence was not marked by thunder or lightning now, but by stillness. It was the hush behind the wind's whisper, the pause between heartbeats, the space where thought and feeling converged without conflict. Here Job felt the sacred answer, not an explanation, but an invitation to dwell in mystery with trust. He remembered how he had wrestled with despair, challenging Almighty with questions born of rage and confusion. Those too were gifts, for they had carved space within him where faith might grow. Not faith rooted in certainty, but faith grounded in the courage to endure unknowing. To live amid questions that have no final answer is itself an act of devotion. The recollection brought a soft smile. With the Lord's attention, his path was no longer a lonely one, nor was it a march toward an elusive destination. Instead, it was a dance with time, a rhythm of falling and rising, each step a surrender to the flow of grace beneath his feet. In the distance, a child's laughter reached him, pure, untouched by suffering, a reminder of the dawn of innocence that dwells inside each person. Hope, he realized, lies in our ability to return to that spirit, to embrace life's sharp edges while nurturing the brilliance within. With a steady breath, Job rose. He felt the weight of his afflictions, yes, but did not carry them as burdens now. They were companions along a winding road, markers of the story he would tell, of the wisdom he had gathered through tears and silence. The path forward shimmered with quiet possibility. It was not marked by sudden miracles or grand proclamations, but by the ordinary miracles of mornings spent in gratitude, of evening stars witnessed with reverence, of small kindnesses that ripple beyond measure. Job's heart, once a resting place for storm clouds, now held a steady light, a humble flame, kindled by the Lord's unseen hand, burning through the dark with patient warmth. That light was not for him alone, but for all who journey with questions clutched close, for those who suffer in silence yet still seek the dawn. He stepped again into the unfolding day, carrying both pain and peace as gifts. The world would continue to shift and test him, yet he walked on with a calm courage, the rhythm of divine love echoing softly along every step he took. In that sacred movement, Job found his voice once more, not a voice of accusation, but of quiet praise, a song of gratitude woven from threads of loss and newfound hope. The Lord's answer was not a single word, but an entire song, sung slowly, deeply, from the heart of one who had learned what it means to truly listen. In the soft embrace of dawn, as gentle light spilled through the leaves overhead, Job rose with a quiet reverence for this new day. He bore no grand declarations or fiery outbursts, only a simple, patient breathing, steady and sure. Each breath was a gift, each moment a sacred offering. He walked slowly, his feet touching the earth lightly, mindful of the rhythm beneath him. The soil, cool and rich, welcomed him as an old friend, a reminder that life pressed onward in time's deep current. The trees stood tall and silent around him, their branches swaying with a smooth and unhurried grace. They held their secrets without hurry, teaching Job that wisdom matures in silence, beyond human haste. The memory of past storms and scorching suns was etched within each seed buried deep in the ground. Job saw himself as one of those seeds, weathered, tested, but still holding quiet potential. His sorrows, once sharpened edges scraping raw against his heart, now softened into worn stones smoothed by the rain. These stones, he thought, could build a bridge, a way forward built from fragments of pain and healing interwoven. There was no thunderous voice from the heavens that day. Instead, God's presence came as a stillness that filled the spaces between the bird songs, a whisper threaded through the sigh of the wind. It was an invitation to rest in mystery without needing to untangle its knots. In this hush, Job found a profound peace that no questions or fears could disturb. Thinking back, he recalled the nights when tears fell like rain and the weight of unanswered questions pressed down hard. Yet those broken moments had been vital. They had carved a path toward deeper understanding, not simply answers but an acceptance that life's meaning often lies beyond grasp. Faith, Job realized, was less about certainty and more about courage. The courage to continue living fully, even when the shadows loom and the soul feels adrift. To walk forward hand in hand with uncertainty, trusting that beneath the surface, a quiet light endures. A child's laughter drifted nearby, bright and clear, a melody of innocence untouched by the world's sorrow. It reminded Job of the spark within every human heart, the hope that persists, fragile yet unyielding. That laughter was a seed of joy, a testament that amidst brokenness, beauty still gleams. Holding this hope close, Job embraced his suffering not as punishment, but as a companion on the long road of growth. Each ache had taught him something vital, a truth no easy comfort could provide. His scars were maps of survival, and in their tracing lay a deeper compassion for himself and others. He saw the path forwards not as grand or dramatic, but as a tapestry woven from simple acts, grace in small gestures, gratitude for the breath of day, kindness offered without expectation. These ordinary miracles were, in truth, the sacred fabric of life. His heart kindled a gentle flame, steady and humble, a quiet warmth that welcomed those who also wandered through pain. This light did not blaze or boast, but shone steadfast, a beacon for tender souls seeking solace. Moving onward, Job sang no triumphant songs, but murmured a quiet prayer of thanks, a sigh of acceptance and listening. In this calmness he found strength. The world was still vast, often mysterious, but no longer frightening. With each step he felt the earth's pulse steady beneath him, a timeless rhythm holding him in its care. The night would come again, sure as shadows follow light, but now Job would meet it not with fear, but with a heart prepared to wait, to trust, to embrace whatever mysteries unfolded. In this gentle dawn, life whispered its truths, not through thunder, but through silence. And in that silence, Job's soul found its home. As the morning light stretched its tender fingers across the land, Job remained still, the cool air brushing lightly against his skin. Each breath was a soft whisper, a thread woven into the fabric of this quiet dawn. In this stillness he felt the pulse of the earth, steady and deep beneath his feet. It was a rhythm older than time, an invitation to rest within the sublime mystery of existence. He let his gaze wander slowly over the field beyond his window, where dewdrops clung to blades of grass like tiny glass beads, silent testimonies to the night's gentle care. The world held its breath in this sacred moment. Even the birds seemed to sing more softly, as though honoring the hush between heartbeats. Job's thoughts drifted, unhurried, toward the vastness of what he could not see or understand. He recognized in himself a quiet courage, not the boisterous kind that demands answers, but a humble patience that welcomes not knowing as a kind of grace. This trust, fragile as early morning mist, was a light in its own right. He remembered how the child's laughter still echoed within him, clear and pure despite all shadows. That laughter was like a bell rung in the still air, a reminder that hope can sing softly even in the midst of sorrow. It was a melody he now carried, a tether pulling him gently out of despair and into presence. The scars etched upon his soul, once raw and aching, now whispered of resilience. They were no longer wounds to be hidden, but marks of a journey weathered and lived. Each one told its own story, a story of survival, of compassion found in unexpected places, of strength born through enduring pain. Job felt the landscape of his life transform slowly, from a series of broken moments into a vast tapestry. Each thread, each small act of grace, each whispered prayer, each gesture of kindness, interlaced to form a pattern of purpose. It was imperfect, yes, but beautiful in its complexity. A steady flame glowed softly within him, warm and unassuming. It was not a fire that burned out of control, but a gentle light that could offer comfort to others who wandered lost in their own darkness. This flame was a gift, a quiet song in the depths of night, inviting those who heard it to pause and breathe. Job's voice, when it came alive, was like a soft wind weaving through the trees, a prayer without words but full of meaning. His song was one of gratitude, not for what he had gained, but for the very act of being present, of witnessing the unfolding of life without resistance. He chose this path, one of attentive listening to the world around and within him. Each moment held within it a secret, a sacred offering waiting to be received. He met life not with trembling hands seeking to grasp control, but with open palms ready to accept the gifts of uncertainty. And so he walked into the dance of mystery with quiet trust, his steps slow and reverent. The silence enveloped him like a gentle cloak, soft as the wings of an unseen bird. In this embrace, Job found peace, not the peace of complete understanding, but the peace of surrender. The day unfolded like a delicate bloom, petal upon petal, revealing its beauty gradually. Job moved through it mindfully, aware of each breath, each heartbeat. Each moment offered anew. There was no rush, no grasping, only the tender unfolding of his soul in harmony with the world. As twilight approached, the sky deepened into hues of violet and gold. Job sat beneath an ancient tree, its branches heavy with quiet wisdom. He closed his eyes and let the cool evening settle around him, the sounds of night weaving a lullaby of calm. In this sacred silence, he felt the Lord's presence once more, not in thunder or lightning, but in the soft pulse of life, steady and true. The divine was not hidden in grand displays, but in these fleeting, tender moments that carried the weight of eternity. Job's heart swelled with a gentle gratitude. Yes, the path had been steep, the unraveling slow and painful. Yet here, in the stillness, he understood that the journey itself was the answer. Every tear, every sorrow, every question had led to this gentle awakening. He opened his eyes and traced the stars as they began to appear, tiny lights scattered across the vast velvet canopy above. Each was a quiet beacon, a promise that even in darkness, light endures. It was a harmony of silence and song, and Job was part of its sacred rhythm. With a final breath, deep and steady, he sent a blessing into the night, not one of words, but of open-hearted presence. The Lord had answered, not with explanations, but with an invitation, to live fully in the mystery, to hold faith as a soft flame in the wind. And so Job rested. His spirit, once burdened, now light with trust, folded into the gentle embrace of all that is, a poet of patience, a singer of silence, a witness to the unfolding grace of the unseen.